colleagues said, my title has also changed to The Power of the Player, Theorizing Concerted Resistance. And I want to start with a quote today. Foucault famously said, "Where there is control, there is resistance." And I think as organizational communication scholars, this is no small point. It speaks to what Barker describes as the problem of control, and that some autonomy must be surrendered in any coordinated action. Moreover, we know that controlling structures are a sufficient precursor for resistance. Thus, control and resistance is a situated struggle that must be negotiated in all organizations. Now, I know that most of you know all about unobtrusive control theory, but I want to highlight just a few key points so we're on the same page as I go through my dissertation work. We know that unobtrusive control strategies require organizational members to play an active rather than passive role in their own management. And this is accomplished through an inculcation of premises. However, Beisel notes that there are cognitive gaps between certain premises and conclusions. And these can be sources of resistance for organizational members. Moreover, unobtrusive control theory describes the influence of identification, in that members' identification results often in organizational control, but it can also result in member resistance as well. Kuhn and Nelson note that people act in ways that help them recognize their important identities to which they belong. Lastly, unobtrusive control theory highlights a duality of control and resistance rather than a dualism, that members are simultaneously controlled by and resistant to their identifications. Now, relatedly, the phenomenon of concerted control describes a shift in the locus of control from management to workers, who then collaborate to develop their own means of control. Now, this is interesting because it promotes shared ownership and empowerment of workers, and workers are also encouraged to take responsibility for the actions of their peers. And Barker claims that the identification members feel with each other and the organization makes this type of control particularly difficult to resist. And so, what I wanted to study and observe was what Zoller and Fairhurst describe as resistance leadership. And this is really interesting because it describes members' attempts to influence others to challenge, invert, or disrupt managerial control or hegemonic discourse within organizations. And I think this is a really exciting idea. Now, this is significant because it describes instances of emergent leadership, instances of leadership that aren't conflated with traditional positions of authority. And also, it describes ways in which backstage interactions or microforms of everyday resistance can influence organizational change in unintended and unexpected ways. So I pose the following preliminary research questions. What, if any, discursive means do athletes use to resist and or influence others to resist organizational control? And in what ways do resistance leaders, if at all, note that, emerge in an athletic healthcare context? So, I am currently in the midst of conducting an ethnography with a Division I football team at the FCS level in the southern United States. Yeah. So I was able to conduct more than 150 hours of observation during their training camp in their first week of real practice. I was immersed in the site. I watched training room interactions, practice, team meetings, team meals. I collected head notes and scratch notes, and then I later expanded them into full, detailed field notes. So far, I've conducted 34 interviews with players, trainers, and coaches, and these range from 14 to 85 minutes. Now, in the field, I was just not seeing leadership. I was just not seeing it. I was seeing lots of resistance, but I was just not seeing resistance leadership. And so today I want to talk to you a little bit about the story that found me. And my advisor and I are playing around with names for it, but we're calling it the cream cheese incident. Now, to give you a little context of this, the team in which I'm studying the majority of the players stay over the course of the summer and to do strength and conditioning with the strength and conditioning coach. However, they're not given any sort of resources to stay. They're not getting scholarship money, they're not given room and board, but they are allowed, the team is allowed to provide them with snacks. Now, the NCAA, as you know, has lots of rules. And they have rules as to what constitutes a snack. Players can have bagels, players can have fruits, players can have peanut butter, but players cannot have cream cheese. So, yes, players cannot have cream cheese. Yes, I know. So one day, the strength and conditioning coach, he's like, I like cream cheese. I'm going to throw these guys a bone. I'm going to buy them some cream cheese out of my own pocket. So he goes out, purchases the cream cheese, goes up and sets up their snack in the locker room, and then goes to practice and helps them with their weightlifting circuits. He comes back after they've finished up, and the cream cheese is gone. One of the players had taken the cream cheese. So needless to say, the strength and conditioning coach was not very happy with the team. And he decided that they were all going to go run stadiums. And he told them they were going to run stadiums until somebody told him who took the cream cheese. So that went on for about 20 minutes. And one of the players raised his hand and he said, Coach, it was me. I took the cream cheese. Coach said, okay, come on, son, come inside with me. And he went into the office and he took out a Bible and he said, put your hand on this Bible and swear to me you took the cream cheese. He said, Coach, I can't do it. He said, well, clearly you're not the one that took the cream cheese, so we're going to have to go back out and keep running stadiums. So, needless to say, this went on for another 30, 40 minutes, and most of the team has to have jobs during the summer, so they had to leave. And still to this day, no one on the coaching staff knows who took the cream cheese. And I think what's really interesting about this story is that players here were more willing to give of physical punishment, bodily sacrifice, as well as take the blame, lie for their teammates, rather than snitch, narc, tell on, whatever you would like to term it, rather than succumbing to managerial directives. So, interestingly enough, as I learned of this story, I actually had the opportunity to ask players, okay, what's going on here? What are you guys thinking? And so I want to share with you a few little themes that I'm already seeing within the interviews. First, I noted that there's a team identification over an organizational identification. One of the respondents explains, it's team members only. You don't snitch on your teammates. It's already understood. You're not supposed to snitch on your teammate, especially over something like some cream cheese. I mean, cream cheese. And so I asked him, yeah, even people stepped up and took the blame, right? Yeah, we weren't having it. Clearly, resistance there. Secondly, I was also seeing cultural identification and a fear of alienation. So I asked one of the respondents, what would happen if to a person who got snitched on? And he said, snitches get stitches, very plainly. And so I asked, okay, does that mean they would be ostracized, stigmatized, beat up? Well, not hurt, probably not hurt. Yeah, you'll get probably eliminated from the group, the silent treatment. Third, I was also seeing cultural identification paired with cognitive gaps. So one respondent explains, they're from the inner city, there ain't no snitches. It was one of us who did it, even though if we did or didn't know who did it, it's just like we're still ain't gonna say nothing. You know, that's our team, you know what I'm saying? If you're gonna punish all of us, ain't no point in just punishing him because of some cream cheese. And then lastly, and I think this is really, really interesting, they were discussing this event in terms of team cohesion. So last year, before when I got here, somebody would have told them, but nobody told this year. And it was just kind of made me feel like, snap, we got a nice little team here. I just feel like that's a level of respect we have for one another. I can truly say that we've been family oriented because, I mean, it hasn't been like this any other year. Last year, somebody would have told. So if we can begin some initial theorizing here, if we can say that conservative control is collective control that is exercised by workers themselves according to a set of core organizational values which reinforce managerial control and or hegemonic discourse, then can we say concerted resistance is collective resistance that is exercised by workers according to a set of core group level values which can challenge, invert, or disrupt managerial control and or hegemonic discourse. And I think this is where it gets really exciting. Identifications members feel for each other are sometimes, or in this instance, stronger than the identification for the organization, allowing for collective resistance. And I think this is for two reasons. First of all, it contrasts with Barker's claim that identifications members feel for each other and the organization makes it particularly difficult to resist. And this is for, first is what I'm seeing is there's a cognitive gap between the crime and the punishment, right? So there's a collective premise rejection, and therefore that allows for collective resistance. And then secondly, there's overlapping identifications at work here, right? So the overlapping identifications the players are converging on might be cultural, group, maybe socioeconomic, and this allowed for collective resistance, interestingly enough, without talk beforehand or the presence of a clear, overt resistance leader, even within the backstage interaction. So members were able to call upon previous schema and discourse to resist in the moment. And so what's next? Where am I going with this? So clearly I've modified my title. I've also modified some of my research questions. How do overlapping identifications allow group members to collectively resist? And secondly, in what ways does a collective resistance event shape and is shaped by team member identification? I'm going to do a second round of data collection where I'll be on site for 2 additional weeks. I'll conduct more hours of observation during injury treatments, practice, and games, additional field notes, and then I'll also seek disconfirmation and look for a relevant comparison. So today, I'm really open to your questions and comments, and I'd love to hear some feedback on my ongoing project. Thank you.